The state of play is very clear. Waymo also has a partnership with Uber in different markets.
Yeah.
You now have a partnership in Nashville.
Yeah.
Just explain the rationale for you on why this is a great go-to-market for robotaxi.
Well, as you know, we've been saying for a while, we think self-driving cars are going to be hugely market expanding for rideshare. It's a really good product. And then when we looked at potential partners, of course, Waymo, has to be at the top of the list. The great thing about this partnership is it does two things. It supplies demand. So if you're in the self-driving car business, you got to have demand, and we got lots of demand every single day, and we do it in a very integrated way. But the other thing is, as you just mentioned, it supplies fleet management. And that sounds kind of geeky, but it's really important that every one of those cars be ready to drive, 24/7 if needed. And that's something we're really good at. We've been doing that for a long time.
So you're emphasizing the sort of capital light business model for you, right? The counter argument is the Tesla or the Zoox one, which is control the full stack,
right.
Hardware, software, operationally, the app the consumer interfaces with. Yeah. Would you argue that you can scale this faster going this route, go to more cities quicker?
I would, yeah. I mean, this allows every company to specialize, right? So Waymo can really focus on providing great self-driving technology. The Waymo Driver is obviously a great product. They partner with OEMs, the car manufacturers, that can choose the best, car for them. And then we can provide the fleet management, as I say, that keeps the cars clean and charged and ready to go, as well as the demand, so that anytime a person wants a car, they can get one, or they can get a driver car, right? I mean, they can get both. So I think it's a great division of labor.
Let's talk about that fleet management, Flex Drive, because you're going to be building, you're going to be putting some capital expenditure to work, David.
Yeah.
Why does that make sense, and when will that be finished?
So we've been in the Flex Drive world. Let me explain for a second. So about a decade ago, Lyft decided that for a certain type of driver, it really makes sense to have cars that they can rent right on the platform. And they can we can take care of the maintenance and making sure that those cars are always ready to drive. So that's what we've been doing for about a decade now. So when we look at the autonomous vehicle world, look, when you see a car driving around the city, it looks like magic. It looks like no one had to touch it. But no, someone had to charge it. Someone had to clean it. Someone has to maintain it. Someone probably has to reboot it from time to time. And we're really good at that. So as you say, we're building a new depot there. We've got a small one. We're building a bigger one for this partnership. And what it does is it allows the cars to be ready to drive. Think about, so when you travel on an airline, and you know that, of course, they want the airplane in the air, but they also need it to be ready to fly at all times. They want that turnaround to be super fast, and that's what FlexDrive does. It means that people like Waymo can get the most out of their asset, which is super good for them.
Look, today, investors love this announcement, and the shares are rising. Shares have been doing well all year because you've had 3 straight quarters of profitability. David, how are you going to finance what is a little less asset light, is building these facilities to help keep all our auto cars clean?
Yeah. So as I say, because we've been in the FlexDrive business, the subsidiary business, for a long time, we've actually had capital deployed to that for a long time. We have about 24 locations in about 15 different states across the United States, which I think gives you a sense of how this kind of partnership could scale over time. And we own some of those cars ourselves. Others of those cars are financed by other groups. So the good news is this won't be a significant change to the current strategy. It's just sort of a revectoring, let's say, of the money we spend more towards autonomous.
Okay, scale over time. This morning, Bloomberg Tech producer Marguerite Gallerini put this table together. You know the table, right? It explains the roadmap from here. So let's look at it together. This is 2026, and it focuses on Waymo principally, but there's you there, right? Nashville.
Yeah.
You are going to come up against Uber in negotiating with Waymo for cities that are not yet claimed for. What are the advantages that you're going to present to win that business with Waymo against Uber? And how much you're going to have to give up, to get a deal done?
Yeah. So I think the way I would look at that is one of the reasons we were so, I'll call it, patient in working through this deal, because it took a while, we wanted to come up with something that is good for Waymo, good for Lyft, and good for riders. And that's hard to do. It's hard to have, kind of a 3-way win. We feel really good about it and feel like this is a great model for us to expand to other cities in the future. But look, city by city, some places we're actually going to compete with Waymo itself, right? Because, for example, here in San Francisco, they've got their own
Appreciate
app.
that admission, yeah.
Of course. So this is something that we have to kind of recognize and say, how do we come up with a construct that is really durable and, frankly, can benefit all the companies? And then the other guys will do what they do, and, we'll see who does a better job.
Look, people are going to accuse me of wanting to create a headline here, but it's a really important question. Yeah. Tesla and Zoox are committed to their own go-to-market model, right? We talked about they control the full stack. Yeah. But have you held discussions with both Tesla and Zoox to say, like, look, this is the model we're doing with Waymo. We can do something similar. Do you see that as being realistic?
So, of course, I don't want to comment on conversations we might be having. What I can tell you is we're talking to everyone who finds the partnership model interesting. So there are, of course, always companies, whenever you see a new industry, you have some companies that say, I want to do it all. And frankly, if you look back a couple of years ago, just about every company in the self-driving space was in that zone. They wanted to do everything, top to bottom. I think over time, most companies find, particularly when it's capital intensive and quite complex, like rideshare is and self-driving is, that a division of labor where everyone does what they're good at is the best model. But we'll see.
Yeah.
It's still such early days.
But you struck deals with interesting players in Europe, Baidu. What's it like working with a Chinese giant? What were those negotiations like?
That actually, I'll tell you what was very interesting. It came together fairly quickly. And in part, I think is, frankly, Chinese companies are kind of built for speed. They, for those of you who don't know, Baidu, you can sort of think of them as kind of the Google or Alphabet of China. They have many businesses, but self-driving cars are a very important one for them. And we committed that we would roll out some of their technology in 1 to 2 markets we would expect in Europe over the next 12 months or so. It's still very early days there, but I can tell you they've got really high standards for their technology. We're super excited about working with those guys, and we'll have more to say about that next year once we start to roll out in Europe. 1 minute.
How hard is it to get to New York?
I mean, I can take a flight there pretty easily.
But the auto, the robo-taxi, how hard? When am I going to have it here?
I love that. It's going to take a little while. New York is a complex place to do business. The streets are complicated. There's a lot of interest there. Look, this, Caroline. I mean, Lyft has been there for many years. It's super strong in New York. We also run the City Bike program, as you know. Super excited to bring self-driving there someday. But that was probably going to take a little while. Sorry about that.